Hey everybody, Riot Mort here, back with Riot Kent for patch 11.23 rundown, the first patch of TFT, Gizmos, and Gadgets. And Kent, it feels like it's been a while since you and I have done one of these together, but it's only been 4 weeks, which just goes to show you how much we've been doing over the last 4 weeks.
Yeah, seriously. No, it's like 4 weeks isn't that long to be apart, but I don't know. We've just been doing so many other things, talking about balance, and so definitely feels like it's been a long time. Or
Yeah, it turns out, this patch, this set has been a little hectic to balance. There's augments, traits, items. There's so much going on that our conversations end up very long, and so the days feel like they go on and on and on.
yeah, we literally go through like every single thing that's available in the game: items, traits, augments, and we just talk about how can we make this great? Is this good? Is this not? Is this usable? Is this not usable? It's long, long conversations me and Mort have every
Oof,
day.
oof. Well, all right, enough complaining about our tough days. Let's talk
Yeah.
about the patch. So with this patch, it's the first patch, but a couple things we want to call out. There are some big changes in the sense of things that we're very confident need some kind of bigger changes. But other than that, there are a lot of smaller changes. And we talked about this in the learnings of the last set, but especially with a lot of new players coming in and having fun, we don't want to be thrashing around the balance and taking things that were strong and making them really, really weak, or taking the bottom and bringing them up. We just want to kind of nudge things. So, like, if you're a big fan of playing, say, Academy, it'll still be good after the patch, just a little less good. And so things like that, you're going to see a lot of nudges. But again, we're really trying to avoid the balance thrash with this patch.
Yeah, and on that same kind of note, if there's something weak that you think needs to be buffed and it's not being buffed here, a lot of this is because we're nerfing the other things that are good against it, and by bringing down the overall power level of those things, those units or traits should become better. And so we don't want to swing things, like make things really strong, then have the strong things become really weak, and then it just flip flops the power levels. And so that's why you might not see some of the things you expected these patch notes.
All right, let's jump into it. First change, it's our only system change, but it's a fun one. Basically, we added 6 new possible augment quality arrangements to the game. When we launched, there were only 8 possible. It got people warmed up to the augment system, but we're already seeing people start to kind of predict what's going to happen. If I start with prismatic, I could get a second prismatic, but otherwise the second one will never be prismatic. So we're opening up the gate even more for more different augment combinations. And so we've added 6 new ones here. You can see silver, prismatic, gold, 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 silver, 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 gold, prismatic, gold, 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 our first all 3, other than the 3 prismatic, I suppose. And then prismatic, silver, prismatic, which is the first one where you can get 2 prismatics, not 3. So should be fun. You'll notice the odds of getting a prismatic only went up very slightly, from 30% of your games to 31%. But again, just more different combinations to add to the replayability of the set.
Yeah, we feel like this kind of change will more variance here will help make each game feel even different, more and more different, because you get different power levels at different stages of the game, and adds to the replayability, as Mort said. So yeah, should be fun.
All right, let's jump into traits. These are the large ones, and so we'll go down each one by one. Academy was definitely the most overperforming trait from the launch. On PBE, we had kind of overbuffed it, trying to get people to play it, and now that they've kind of learned how to play it, it turned out it was overperforming. At 2 and 4, it's getting a very slight nerf. 2 and 4, not really that abrasive, so just a little bit of a nerf. But 6 and 8 especially were looking real good. Very easy to play, very powerful. The Academy Spat in particular was one of the best items in the game. So at 6 and 8, they're losing 10 of their starting AD and AP, as well as getting less per stack, which means they won't ramp up nearly as fast into these, ridiculously high DPS champions.
Yeah, we were seeing 6 and 8 ramp up way too fast, and so we wanted to be sure to tune that down. They can still, scale infinitely, and you can still achieve that dream, but wanted to slow that down just a little bit.
All right, why don't you take Bodyguard?
Yeah, for Bodyguard, the Bodyguard vertical, when you start to play a lot of bodyguards and kind of focus on building up your bodyguards as your main units, really struggled. A lot of it was they needed something more selfish to help themselves sustain longer. Just the armor wasn't enough, especially in a set that has AP, has a lot of shred, and so we were giving them a shield that activates when they do their taunt about a second into combat. This shield gives them some effective health. The shield never falls off. There's no duration until it gets depleted. And so this is a way for us to give them more effective health to multiply their armor without giving them actual health that interacts with other items and traits.
Yeah, so this would be a slight bump. To be honest, I don't think this is going to magically make, 6-8 bodyguard super meta or anything like that, but at least it'll allow them to be a bit more survivable against magic damage. And so hopefully if you go vertical, you'll feel a little more rewarded. If we have to do more in the future, I think we will, but we really want to avoid giving them magic resist. Bodyguards really should be about countering physical damage, not countering magic damage.
Yep.
Cool. Colossus. This is, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little nervous about this change. We went back and forth with this all through development, all through PBE, because when a Colossus gets really, really big, and then we've all seen those 10k health Cho'Gaths with tanky items and redemptions and gunblades, they get really tanky. Right now, people aren't really running Colossus. Losing 2 units in your army isn't really worth it for a lot of times, so we're making it a little bit more worth it. The side effect of that is you're going to see some very super tanky, whether it be Galio or Cho'Gath, they're going to be hard to kill, or even some Scion builds, so expect Colossus. If you see 2 of them in the same comp, they're going to be a lot harder to kill.
Yeah, a little bit of a scary change, kind of agree with Mort here, but definitely want to push Colossus into something that's something that's been struggling, just push them more into the meta, so giving them some more DR.
All right, Enforcer. This one is more of a, I'd say, design correction, because Enforcer definitely had some issues that felt really awkward. One of which was that it didn't really have any counterplay. You could build a QS, and that didn't matter. The other thing was that it was possible to like Zephyr and enforce the same unit, which made you feel like you wasted the trait and item. So what we've done now is Enforcer will basically go, is the target CC immune? If so, skip it. Has the target been Zephyred? If so, skip it. Otherwise, go to the next valid target. And so you won't be able to enforce Colossus anymore or QS, and you won't accidentally waste it with a Zephyr.
Yep. Overall, just a bigger, nice quality of life upgrade for Enforcer.
And then Imperial, pretty simple change, but from what we can tell, 5 Imperial is very hard to play and not really worth it. So we're just going to take it light for now, and just buff up the team-wide part. We don't really want the primary Tyrant doing any more damage. It's already got 125% damage buff, which we've seen, whether it be Samira or Scion, can be a little nutty. But getting those supporting units to be able to dish out a little more damage, even without items, we're pretty comfortable with.
Yeah, we've seen that 5 Imperial is pretty difficult to play, especially because you have to field a Colossus, so you're not running as many units on your board. And so we want to make sure it's worth it for you to be putting that trait in and activating it. And those Imperial side units will no longer be like, they are something that they'll dish out good damage. And so, should be better.
All right, moving on. Oh man, Innovator.
Oh,
okay.
The dragon. All
yeah.
Right.
Okay, so basically, I'm going to skip over all the numbers here and just tell you that Innovator is being nerfed. What it's going to be here is if you have a bunch of 1-star Innovators, it's going to be a pretty decent size nerf. What is it, Kent? Like 12, 15%?
Yeah, it's about 12% if you have all 1-stars, and then it comes down to about 5-6% when you have a fully upgraded 2-star board.
Yep. So the Innovator comp will be a little bit weaker, but if you invest in it, maybe get some 3-stars, it can be powerful or even more powerful, opening up some of those crazier options. And then in addition, we've made some pretty big changes to the dragon, because the dragon is supposed to be a pretty cool, moment. You get this big ass dragon. But to be honest, due to our, trying to get it out there on time, we felt like we didn't ship it at the quality it should have been. So we made some pretty big changes, and they're not actually even listed here, but the team, Kent, and some of our artists in sound got some sound in there, some VFX in there. You should check it out. The dragon will just feel better, and that's really cool to see. In addition, the dragon is now CC immune, so no more awkward like watching him get stunned mid-cast or anything like that. We also lowered his attack range, so he'll actually move and tank. You can do clever things like put him on the back line and have him move forward. We made his AoE spell hit the entire map, so that's a very powerful buff. But in exchange, We lowered the fear duration by a second. We lowered the critical strike damage of the buff a little bit and his lightning damage a little bit. So overall, we're expecting this to be about power neutral, but feel a lot better.
Yep. Wait till you see this dragon roar. You can see the effects on the map. They should be way more prominent. Hopefully you enjoy it. There's a lot of different teams that worked on it and got this upgrade in there. But also overall, this is like a nerf to the dragon stats and also the other units stats. But the dragon gains this upgrade in that the fear range is really large, and so you never feel bad about you don't get punished as hard when you don't position as well for the dragon, but the spell should be very meaningful when that goes off.
All right, you want to hit sniper next?
Yeah. Oh, I'm really excited for this change. So sniper, it doesn't. So what we did was we gave it that snipers have 1 hex extra attack range, but all the units that were already snipers, so Jhin, Misfortune, Tristana, Kog'Maw, and Caitlyn all lose 1 innate base attack range. This is so they all remain neutral, but so the purpose of this change is mainly for the emblem. If you put this emblem on a unit, it's kind of like a rapid fire cannon where they gain 1 hex range. They don't get any other benefits other than they're a sniper now, but it should create some cool combos that you can create. That you put a sniper on a Vi with Sister, for example, and she can punch from range, and it also has 4 hex range. And that 4 hex AoE, gains sniper damage amp threat. It should create some cool combos. I'm really excited for this.
All right. And then Mercenary. Let's talk about Mercenary. So Mercenary is a very fun trait. I personally think it's even more fun than Fortune ever was. But the reality is, especially in the hands of skilled players, it's overpowered. And you'll see with some other changes as well. But Mercenary is way overperforming. If you have 3 Mercenary early, you probably got a top 4. If you hit 5 Mercenary early, you probably got a top 2 if you play it right. Don't even get me started on 7 Mercenary. It's wild. So in all good conscience, we do have to bring it down. Now, you can read the details here, but the TLDR of it that's important is, overall, there will be just a little bit less gold throughout. So if you're playing 3 or 5, there'll just be a little less gold. Nothing too crazy. Krakens are less likely to show up. And what this means is Krakens are usually the things that give you Nikos. So you're probably going to see less Nikos helps from playing Mercenary in general. You might still get 1 or 2 if you're lucky, but overall there's going to be less of them. In addition, it says fish combos moved from 3 loss to 4 loss. Fish combos were what gave you a defensive item, an offensive item, or a utility item. And why this is important is if you were running 5 Mercenary and win streaking, you were just generating items like crazy. That won't happen anymore. If you're win streaking with 5 Mercenary, you'll still get pretty chunky gold payouts, but you will get no items. If you want items from 5 Mercenary, you have to lose streak into 4 loss. By 4 loss, I mean 1, because it's +3. And then finally, 7 Mercenary was very powerful also. And want to keep that one exciting, so you're still going to get your items, your Nikos, your 5 costs, but it probably didn't also need a bunch of gold on top of those things. So we just pulled out some gold from 7 Mercenary.
Yeah, this trait was very, very strong, but nothing else to add on this.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a lot, but to be honest with you, I don't think we hit it hard enough. We'll see. But again, this is what I'm talking about, where we don't want to overkill things, and especially with Mercenary, which no matter how strong or weak it is, let's be clear, it's fun. It needs to stay viable.
Yeah, we're also hitting a few of the units too, so that should help bring down Mercenary just a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah,
speaking of which, let's talk about the large champion changes. There's only 4. There's actually only 4 changes that are large here, and the first 2 should be very clear why. Gangplank, Mercenary, who also had 800 health, a ton of armor and MR, AD, and was hitting hard, and also generates gold when he gets kills. That was a little much.
Yeah, GP on 2-1, you're farming infinite gold throughout the game, so we're making it harder for him to do that, both by lowering his base stats and the damage he puts out.
Yeah, I feel like if anyone got hit pretty hard this patch, it was Gangplank and Mercenary.
Yep.
But again, we're still confident they'll be decent, right? You get an early Gangplank with an IE, still going to be chunking, he'll still make gold, just a little less easy than he was before.
Yeah, and the reason we hit this base spell damage is so that you have to kind of invest in him for him to deal large chunks of damage to farm farm gold for you. So the base damage, hits the base version of Gangplank. But if you give him like a Deathblade and IE, his AD scaling on his spell damage will still be really high, and so he can still kill things. But that requires that investment.
Speaking of which, Misfortune. Misfortune was another one that got buffed right before we went to live. And the reality is, it turned out in some cases she was better than Jhin. An early Misfortune that you invested in was actually just insane. It was single-handedly enabling some 4 and 6 sniper builds, which isn't necessarily bad, except that she's also a mercenary who then farms you infinite money and items. Yeah, so unfortunately for Misfortune, we had to bring her down, so she gets a little less attack speed, so she won't cast quite as often, and the cast will be just a little bit less hard here. And so this should bring, all of this, plus the mercenary changes, should bring mercenary, hopefully, to a more balanced state.
Yeah, and we're still fully expecting a carry Misfortune to be viable, just not as oppressive as it currently, or like as strong as it currently is.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's oppressive, but it's definitely strong when it's strong.
Yep.
Speaking of which, and this is the one, if you want to ask, hey Mort, what didn't you see coming? I did not see Samira becoming S tier. I gotta tell you. But it turns out there were some people who figured out some good builds, figured out how to play her with 3 Imperial, 2 Challenger, and just get her to 3-star, and whew, she hits hard. So unfortunately, she's hitting a little harder than I think we're comfortable with, so we did have to nerf her. But we also added something to make her feel a little bit better, because her spell cast felt like it took a long time. It reminds me of Yasuo pre-change. So we actually reduced the total cast time of the spell. Overall, this is still a nerf, but it is a nerf that should also feel a little bit better.
Yeah, definitely should feel better when you have high attack speeds. If you have blue buff, the cast should just feel a lot more smooth, and along with her auto attacks. Also, I'm glad we caught this on time. It's like it takes some time for players to start optimizing builds, and we caught this kind of later and kind of last minute. But I'm glad we got this in. Into the patch.
Agreed. And finally, Galio. Galio, we wanted to be careful not to overbuff Galio. He might still need a little more love. But again, with the Colossus buff, we didn't want to go overkill here. So what we did is gave him back some of his starting mana. This should allow him, if he's 1-star, to be able to be more likely to get his cast off and help the team. And he'll do just a little bit more damage. And you're not really relying on Galio for damage, but it can add up. It can make a difference in a fight. And so that little bit should help Galio as well as Colossus. If it's not enough, we'll do more next patch. But again, it should be a nice nudge to get him back to playable and make him usable at 1-star, so you can get him to 2-star where he's quite good.
Yeah, didn't want to swing too hard here, but if you commit to him, activate some of his traits or give him an item, you should be able to cast at 1-star.
Wait. Continuing on, because there's a lot. Let's talk about items. I'll go real quick here, but TLDR, on the item side, the only thing we did was we looked at some of the Ornn items. And the Ornn items, some of them are very, very good, and some of them were baits that you should never, ever pick up. So we're fixing that and making sure that none of them are baits and that they're actually all good and very interesting cases. And we can do this now because unlike back when they were in Fates you could farm infinite of these things. Now we know you only get 1, and so we can make sure that 1 is very powerful. And so Death's Defiance already was decent, but we'll make you a little tankier in addition. Mana Zane was looking real bad, so guess what? Now it gives you 200 mana over 4 seconds. This can be really good on someone like Lux. Even Janna, Kaisa, you can do some pretty wonky things with this. Obsidian Cleaver, probably one of my favorites now because it gives you the full 70% armor and MR shred. Nothing has done that in a long time, so being able to get the full shred on everything is very powerful. Rando and Sanctum, just a little bit of a buff, more armor and MR. And finally, Rocket Propelled Fist. This one's funny because we didn't actually buff the effect, but it's basically 3/4 of a Warmogs and a blue buff to start with. And so if you want a lot of core stats on the champion, you can get a Rocket Propelled Fist.
Yeah, that fist is pretty loaded with stats. And 30 starting mana is always really nice. Just having a blue buff, on a unit just for the first cast feels really good. So Rocket Propelled Fist is interesting. This change is interesting.
So again, the goal here is that now if you ever get the Ornn artifact and you take it, it should actually be a tough decision and not, here are the bad ones, here are the good ones.
Yep.
Cool. Moving on. Augments. And by the way, these augments forgive the icon colors. Some of them may be wrong. I can only pull what I got. So anyway, Ardent Sensor. This is the enchanter one that says whenever you heal, your allies get attack speed. We are lowering it to tier 1 so that it should be, it's not quite fitting the bill in a tier 2. So lowering it to tier 1 should make it more likely to be picked up.
Yep, and we'll keep an eye on it at tier 1 to see if we need to continue tuning the levers, but we feel like it's not really as competitive in tier 2, so it should be a tier 1 augment.
Same with lifelong learning. This is the one where every turn your scholars win and are alive, they gain AP. This is a harder one to use, but if you can get it and pull it off, it can work really well. At tier 2, that was way too risky. At tier 1, maybe it won't be.
Yeah, and you can get it a lot more commonly early on at tier 1, so you can start farming those stacks.
All right, Runic Shield. This is one that we're changing for the health of the game a little bit. Basically, now it's going to work a lot like Exiles, where the shield no longer lasts forever. It lasts for 8 seconds. And so it is a very powerful shield, and with the right amount of AP, you could almost read this as 8 seconds of invulnerability. But after 8 seconds, you will go back down to your base health. We didn't really like, 8 Arcanists just getting a free, basically, 1,000, 2,000 health sometimes.
Yep.
So now it's actually a shield.
Yeah. Definitely better for the health of the game. Some units don't get hit until later, and they still have that 1,500 health shield, and it's like, damn, that is a very strong augment. So the shield will be slightly better, but the duration is coming down to it should be healthier overall for the state of the game.
And then share the spotlight. This is one that's interesting because I think I've seen some players who think it's very powerful. Our data was showing it as pretty bad, but now you can take this if you're running Socialite and give up to 7 people the full power of the Socialite buff. So, pretty cool.
Yeah, and one big bonus of this is that you don't have to give as much of your positioning. If someone's zephering the spotlight, you can always put your carry somewhere else now, and they won't necessarily be zephyred. You can also juke people by moving it between the different hexes that's surrounding the spotlight.
True, very 5-head.
Yeah.
Continuing on, Titanic Force. Titanic Force is an augment that I think not as many people realize just how insane this augment is. But if you're over 1,300 health, you were getting a lot of AD. A 0-item Gangplank was getting 120 AD off of this augment.
3-star.
Yep. Yeah, 3-star. And that's just insane. And so data was showing it was definitely overperforming. People who were using it were doing so well. So we're nerfing it. You're definitely going to get less AD, and the threshold's a little higher. But again, we're also nudging it here. I think it'll still be good when it's good. I think your 900 AD Cho'Gath will only be 800 AD. Oh no,
A little bit more thinking too for the health, activating the health threshold. It was kind of too easy to access at 1,300, especially in the mid game. And so now you have to kind of think about, do I want to play 2 Bruiser here to help buff my team up so that more units reach the threshold, that kind of stuff, while also lowering the power of the AD because that was just nuts.
Woodland Charm. This one's interesting because we're raising it from tier 2 to tier 3 because it was just overperforming at tier 2. Now, that we could have just lowered the HP at tier 2, but the problem was as we did that, it was feeling really just it just wasn't satisfying, right? An 800 health clone, who cares? So rather than do that, we've decided to make it a tier 3, and we've raised the health, and someone might go, well, I'd never take this at tier 3. I guarantee you there's some number HP you would take this, right? If this said 3,000 HP clone, I guarantee you're taking it. And so this gives us a balance lever and some room to grow. I still think it's going to be good at 1,500, but if it's not, you can go 16, 17, and keep getting it till it's in a balanced state. Whereas we couldn't really do that at tier 2. So for now, it's going to be a tier 3 augment.
Yeah, and just to keep in mind, this copies the star level of your unit too. So if you can, activate enough traits for that unit, they'll even with 1,500 HP, they'll likely be able to get their cast off. Especially if they're a backline unit, they'll definitely be able to get their cast off, and so it's still really, really strong even at tier 3.
I had the pleasure of facing a Lux 3 who had Woodland Charm, and so there were now 2 Lux 3s on the board.
Double lasers.
Yep. And finally, on the augments large side, we have Underdogs. Underdogs was another one that, again, in the very narrow right circumstance, aka Colossuses or 3-star rerolls, it was actually insanely busted. If you've ever faced a 3-star Cho'Gath with Underdogs, it's insane. It was healing for 500, 600, 700 health a second. And in order to do that, we had to keep nerfing it to where it was basically unusable except in those rare cases. By giving it a cap now, where it can only heal up to 200 health a second, this will allow us to buff it back up so that some of the more general cases will feel better. And so basically what this does is general case underdogs should be better, extreme case underdogs will not be as oppressive.
Yep. Bring up the floor, reduce the ceiling.
Cool.
Yay, health. Yep.
Cool. All right. That's it for the large changes. So, and again, for our definition of large and small, for those of you who may be new or returning, large changes are things we do expect to have a pretty big impact on the meta. Small changes are things that, while being buffs or nerfs, probably won't change the meta that much. The things that are still good will be good. They'll just be a little less good. And so if anything in the small changes affects the meta, we've screwed up. So,
yep.
All right, with that in mind, Bruiser 4 and 6 get a little bit less HP. 4 and 6 were just kind of too easy to slot in all the time. And so those comps are going to get just a little bit less HP value.
Yeah. Basically, just we saw in data too. It's like, they're really strong. Not only they're easy to play, but they're also really powerful. And so we're just tuning them down just a little bit.
Sorry, I forgot we did small changes, so I got to go through these quick. Otherwise, we'll be here forever.
You can run through the slide, and I'll
yeah, that's my bad.
Yep.
All right, Clockwork 4 and 6 still underperforming a little bit, so we nudge them up the bare minimum, just giving them plus 5% base 8 attack speed. See what that does. Mutants. Mutants is interesting because it's always interesting to see the difference in the variations. But what we did was the cybernetic version, and sorry, I'm going to keep calling them their old names. I don't know what their newer names are. I'm sorry. Cybernetic gets more HP. We want this to be the high HP build that you're excited to have a bunch of health on your mutants. The Darkstar version, players have figured out how to make this really, really good. Here's a hint, Zerat and training dummies. And when it's good, it's real good. Unfortunately, it was a little too good. So we're having to just take out 5 AD and AP from each level. The Elderwood version, we want that to be the tanky version, where your champs have very high armor and MR. Unfortunately, they were probably getting a little too much offensive power as well. So we're going to pull out some offensive power from the Elderwood version for now. If we have to do more, we probably will. But we're probably not pulling power out of the defensive version of Elderwood. And then finally, Scrap. Scrap has a pretty interesting new change here, which is pretty much a buff. And that basically now it'll try to roll items that will help the champion. So for example, you'll never get Ziggs with Zerat Portal or Blitzcrank with Deathblade. They'll try to roll items that help the champ more. And so this overall will be a buff because Scrap will get more likely to get items that help them.
Yeah, Scrap will now. I just only have something to add for Scrap, but it'll feel a lot better throughout the entire game, even when you're running like 2 Scrap, but especially if you're running like a lot of Scrap units, they'll all get something that's like good for them, and so you can actually run a vertical Scrap comp with carries within Scrap, basically. So it's not only a buff, but it's also just general feels good. You never get a wasted frozen heart Ziggs in the backline.
Yep, cool. On the champion side, all right, Ezreal. Ezreal 1 and 2 were carrying the game a little too well as item holders, so we pulled out just a tiny bit of spell damage from them. But Ezreal 3 was basically a bait you should never go, and so we're giving him a little bit of spell power back. Singe 3, another champion underperforming for 3-star 1 costs, so we're just letting him stun his primary target a little longer. Very tiny buff, probably won't move the needle much, but at least if you invest in Singe 3, you get a little bit of reward for it. Twisted Fate, I'll be honest, this was a mistake on my end, but when we originally were changing his manas on PBE, it was like 30 out of 45, and then we changed it to 30 out of 40. A champion should not be 30 out of 40, it should be 0 out of 40, so he has to take time to cast. This was allowing him to be way too good in the early game with Morello, so he's down to 0 out of 40. He will now need to actually auto-attack a few times to get his spell off. And then finally the Ziggs change. Hilariously enough, the motivation for this Ziggs change is to simply make sure that he will survive 1-2. Because with Cloak or Rod and 0 crits in the wrong position, he could die. And champs should not be able to die on 1-2. So, fixed.
Yeah, the Ziggs one, it was actually such a specific, like, he needs to be in the specific hex, and with those 2 specific items, where the enemies would split up, and 0 crits, the enemies would split up, and then the bomb would miss, and doesn't crit. So, his autos don't crit, so he just will die to those minions. It was a very specific scenario, but it was extremely bad when it happened. So we're making sure that never happens.
Cool. On the 2-cost side, Katarina gets a buff. To be honest, this is just to undo the Academy. Because she's getting nerfed via Academy, but we actually like where she is right now. She's getting buffed to counteract that. So this should be power neutral for Katarina specifically. Kogma's, we like where his balance is between his spell and his AD damage, but early game, unfortunately, like a Cog 2 just really isn't very good. Unless you have like full mutant going on. So we're buffing his AD just a little bit to help him get through the early game. Swain 2 and 3 were actually quite a bit tankier than they need to be. And so we're just lowering the healing a little bit on Swain 2 and 3. And then finally, Trundle. Trundle's a really good brawler, good for rerolls. But his spell AD was just hitting a little hard for how much AD he had. And so we're nerfing that just a tiny bit.
And just as a reminder, this isn't actually that big of a hit to Trundle because he has so many other parts of his spell as well.
Yeah, that's true. He has the attack speed slow, and he gains the AD as well. And so, yeah.
So he ramps up, and he's a scrap unit that's getting buffed also. So
yeah, true. All right. On the 3-cost side, Cho'Gath 1 and 2 are still kind of underperforming. We want to be really careful. But I'll be honest with you, I'm a little nervous on this one, but we'll see. But basically, we're just letting him have 10 more mana. So he'll be able to cast just a little bit more often. Cho'Gath is a Colossus. He's a mutant. Some of those mutant traits are getting nerfed. But he should be able to bite and hopefully get some stacks quicker.
Yeah, I mean, Cho'Gath casts really slow, but that's kind of intended because Cho'Gath needs to stack up. And so if he's stacking too much, he ramps up way too quickly. And so we didn't want to move too far on this, but definitely just wanted to give him a little nudge.
On the 4-cost side, it's funny. You look at these Mundo changes and you're like, how the hell is that in small? That's a bunch of changes. But the reality is, let me break it down for you. He does less damage. That's basically most of these changes. Mundo is a very good tank, and so we want him just doing less damage. It's weird to see your best tank also be your second highest damage. So nerfed his damage at 1 and 2 star. And then on the healing side, it's actually about neutral. The only difference here is that he won't get quite as much from the burst, but he'll have to get that over time. And so it might give you a smaller window or a better window to burst him down. But at the same time, it could also be a buff because if he was close to full and then he spikes up, he doesn't waste as much anymore. So that's why this one's kind of debatable. But the TLDR of Mundo here is less damage, heals a little different. On Fiora's side, basically her spell took about 0.4 seconds to start up. It felt really long and laggy. So we've reduced that to 0.2 seconds. So she should get started on her spell a little bit quicker. Less window for her to accidentally burst down and die. Urgot, very powerful champion, definitely rose up in the second half of the patch. Just gonna take away 5 AD. Remember, this is 5 and then 9 and then, higher at 3-star, not that that matters. So Urgot should be doing just a little bit less damage. And then same with Yone. I think Yone, at least in NA, became the hot button, oh my god, he needs nerfed. Not so much in other regions. But with Yone in particular, we didn't like how much damage he was doing without his traits. You could run 2 Challenger, 2 Academy, and he was just unloading a truckload of damage. So we're lowering his attack speed a little bit so that if you really want Yone to cut loose, you're going to need to go 4 Challenger or 4 Academy or 6 Academy and really invest in that Yone. Because again, we still want him to be a premier melee carry, just not quite as for free.
Yep. Main thing I have to add here is, Fiora right now, by changing her startup delay, making it a lot faster, it should make her a lot more consistent. You should see her if you build her as a carry, she should go off a lot more frequently and also be able to get those off much quicker. And so she should feel a lot better when you make her the star of your comp. And same for Yone. We're nerfing Academy, but at the same time, we've seen him succeed outside of vertical Academy, and so we want to tune him down just a little bit too.
No, it's interesting because I think Fiora might need a few more buffs, but we're being extra careful here because the last time we did a animation change that we thought was minor, it turned out it made Yasuo S tier. So we're being extra careful this time.
Got to be super careful. And also we're tuning down a bunch of things around her, so it's she's getting this plus things are coming down. We don't want to go too far, too hard.
Yeah, if she needs more, we'll give her next patch, but let's go light here.
Yep.
All right, on the 5-cost side, Melee Jace just gets a little bit less bonus armor and MR. He's not going to be quite as tanky for free. He'll still be doing just as much armor shredding and MR shredding and damage, so he should be good there. And again, the thing with all these 5 costs is we still want them to be good, exciting 5 costs. They're all just a little too good. Jinx lowering her attack speed just a little bit. To be honest, I think Jinx got away. I would have nerfed her more, but we got to be careful here. And again, we want to be light and make sure that these champs stay fun. So Jinx will stay fun. Same with Tom Kench. Tom Kench, great champion, farms items. I'm so glad people figured out that he's good. But we're lowering his damage a little bit, so he does need to have a few more glutton stacks before he can really start farming you items. And then finally, Yuumi. I think Yuumi is probably like the premier easy to slot in 5 cost. So her cuddly shields will be a little less. She'll be a little bit more vulnerable.
Yeah, when Yuumi casts, she jumps out of her target, and so that's kind of a window for you to kill her. And so by lowering the HP, not only is the shield smaller, she also, that window is a lot. You can kill her more reliably within that window.
I'll be honest, I never thought in my professional career I would say the sentence, "She'll be less cuddly," and that will help the balance.
Oh no. It's such a cute sentence.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. All right, continuing on. Only one item change. Ionic Spark. Ionic Spark definitely thrived in this set. There are a lot of higher mana costs, lowering the MR of some of these very tanky champions. This item has thrived to the point where it's actually, I think, maybe not as secret amongst challengers, but overall, I think a lot of people are still sleeping on this item. So we're just lowering the damage from this a little bit. We want it to be a good item, and we're glad it's good. Just a little too good.
Yeah, very high mana costs this set, and so definitely needed a little nudge down.
Poor Galio.
Galio, yeah.
All right, on the augment side, on the small side, okay, so Built Different is probably the biggest change here. Built Different 1, not changing. Built Different 2 and 3 are getting nerfed. And let's be honest, Built Different, now that people are figuring out, is very good. However, we're also no longer going to offer this as a third choice, because let's be real, at 4-6, if you weren't running any traits hoping for Built Different, how? And then finally, if you do take Built Different, and this is a bit of a buff, which is why we're gotta be careful, you will no longer get offered hearts and souls and emblem augments and like Tome of Traits, because there was nothing worse than running Built Different and getting offered 3 traits that you're like, I don't want any of these. Overall, I think Built Different probably got away scot-free, but again, light touches. We still want Built Different to be a fun playstyle. Binary Airdrop, definitely overperforming at Tier 1. We're buffing it up to Tier 2, so it will be harder to use, but in exchange, it also gets the same buff that Scrap got, which means the extra bonus item you get from Binary Airdrop is going to be favored towards items you like, so you're not going to get a Zerat Ziggs or a Deathblade Blitz. So that is a pretty big buff to Binary Airdrop. Finally, Calculated Loss can no longer be offered as a third choice. You're not loss streaking from 4-6. And Dominance can no longer be offered as a third choice. You're not really going to turn on the win streak at 4-6.
Yep. Point of clarity for Binary Airdrop is that, like, if you were running an Ezreal and you only deal physical damage, you can still roll Hextech Gunblade if you have a Rod on him. It's not like going to be every item you get is going to be perfect. So that's still going to be a limitation of this and still part of a little bit of the variance part of it. But you will never roll like a Frozen Heart on that Ezreal. Yep. So it'll be a lot better, not perfect still. So don't expect to always have a great item that comes from this.
Yeah, that's a good clarifying. Continuing on, Scrap, Junkyard, can no longer be offered as a third choice. Again, we're trying to save you from making some really bad decisions here. Sharpshooter was overperforming just a little bit. Definitely, like, especially with Gangplank, Urgot, and Jinx, this was a lot of extra bonus damage. So we're just nudging it down a little bit with 5% more fall-off damage. And then finally, Windfall actually had a bug with it that we fixed, where it was granting, instead of the intended 20, 25, 30, was granting 25, 30, 30. So we fixed the bug to start with, and then if it needs further nerfs, we'll nerf it further, but we wanted to start with just fixing the bug to make sure it's giving the right amount of gold.
It's actually really interesting. Like, I don't think any players have pointed this out. We caught this in QA, but it's like, when you get that much gold, you're not really counting. You're just like, oh, gold, let me pick it all up. And you just pick it up. So, yeah.
All right. And that leads us to bug fixes. We fixed a lot of bugs. There's still a lot more to go. We're drowning in them, to be honest. But let me read through these as fast as I can. Sharpshooter will no longer work with snipers. That was weird. Broken Stopwatch Augment will now properly CC immune units. Weird that Colossus were running around also. Items created from the binary airdrop augment will now properly trigger their start of phase combat effects. It's unfortunate, but if you were getting like Zephyr or Zeke's, it wasn't working. Blitzcrank allies will now properly retarget to his rocket grab target if they're within range, so that's a bit of a blitz buff. The runic shield augment will no longer grant shields to units on the bench. I mean, I thought it was funny seeing those little blue shields on the bench, but fixed. Training dummies no longer appear on the end game match history, so no more of those question marks on your end game screen. Mercenary orbs have been moved to the right, so they should no longer be hidden by the Hextech core. They're now more in the center of the map, so hopefully no more missing your mercenary orbs. Fixed an issue where Yordles could fail to combine and star up when coming out of the Yordle portal. This was most commonly happening in Hyper Roll, but it could happen anywhere. That being said, there might still be a second, much rarer way this bug can happen, so if you see it, let us know. Gold Collector no longer grants gold on PvE rounds, and now Tarek will no longer fail to heal himself if his primary healing target dies while he's casting.
Whew, lots of bugs. Still many more to go, but we're gonna tackle all of them.
Yep. So, whew. All right, we made it through, and so as you can see, I think it feels like a bigger patch, but it only feels that way because we also have augments now on top of it, and there were Ornn items thrown in there, and there's just so much content that patches I think will inherently feel bigger. But overall, other than like the mercenary nerfs and the academy nerfs, it should feel like a small patch. I don't expect the meta to shift drastically from this. I just expect there to be some more combinations and a little bit more healthy diversity across the game.
Yeah, with this, we're not expecting to see much of the meta change. Just maybe some more comps rise up, to more optimizations also as players start to mess with these new things like sniper emblem. I mean, and just bring more things into the meta rather than like shift the meta too much.
Cool. All right, well, that's going to do it for the first patch rundown. I got to say, from everyone on the team so far, I think we've been pretty ecstatic with the reception so far. It's been nice to see everyone having a blast, people coming back that haven't played in a while. It feels like, I think we were kind of hyping this setup leading up to the launch, and it seems like so far it was worthy of that hype, but, we'll have to see.
Yeah, it's super great to see everyone's feedback so far. Everyone's been like, really positive on it. And even us on the team, we just like playing the game and we just want to play more of the game when we get off work too. And so
I think Whitrock already hit 100 games played.
Witty is nuts. Witty is really focusing on that climb to Masters, that race to Masters that we have on the TFT team.
It'll be the first time you hit Masters, so that'll be good. So
yep.
Cool. Anything else you want to add, Kent? I mean, a lot to go through, and we're gonna keep doing this every 2 weeks for the rest of our lives. But yeah,
yeah. No, I think this is the first patch is gonna be a little bit longer, a little bit larger. As we go, hopefully more things shift into the smaller bucket. We don't have as many large changes, and so the patches may still look kind of big if we tweak a lot of things, nudging things around, but it shouldn't be as impactful as like this patch, which shouldn't even be that impactful, to be honest. So should be good.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, that's gonna do it for us. Hope you guys enjoy. This patch goes live November 17th. Oh, I can't believe we forgot the most important thing this patch. I can't believe I forgot. Double up.
Double
yes.
Up.
Double up is launches coming. This patch. How did I not put this in here? Anyway, double up launches. So you'll be able to play double up. New queue opens up. 2v2v2v2. That's coming November 17th also. And don't forget that at the end of the 6 to 8 week beta period, whoever's on top of the ladders will be invited to a tournament. So even though it's ranked like Hyper Roll, there is a reward for being the top of the doubles ladder. So
yeah, and if you haven't played on PvE, definitely check it out. There's some big differences from double up versus standard. Some new things that I don't want to spoil, but check it out. Let us know what you think. It should be a lot of fun.
Nice. All right. Well, that's it. On behalf of the team, hope you guys are enjoying Gizmos and Gadgets. A lot more to come. We're already working on the mid-set expansion. We're already working on the next set. It's TFT. Lots of TFT. Everybody loves TFT. So
we love TFT.
All right. Until next time, take it easy.
Goodbye.